Good afternoon, Dr. Curry. After watching the lecture about effective listening and reading chapter 3, I have come to the conclusion that my dad is a good listener. So my dad is a good listener because every time someone has a conversation with him, whether it be me or someone else in the family or just a family friend, I've noticed that he listens and he's very observant. He looks at the body language, and he makes comments. He'll listen very effectively, and then if he doesn't understand something, he'll ask questions. Like in chapter 3, it said ask questions, even if it's like an elementary question to say or ask, but he does ask questions, and sometimes I see him paraphrasing things, which is good, that's effective listening. Sorry. And so sorry, I'm gonna look at the thing real quick. I think good listeners in my life so far have gotten really far. Take my dad, for example. He has a manager position in the warehouse where he works at, and I feel like he has such a good communication that the boss knows him and he knows his way of operating, and the boss will personally ask the boss, the owner of the company, the CEO, will personally ask my father, like, hey, what are you noticing? Do you think this can be changed in another branch, or this branch is doing something? What do you think will help it? Which in a way means that my dad is doing something right and is going to keep his job, which is wonderful, So, and then apart from that, my brother is also a good listener, I've come to see. Apart from being quite the charmer, a lot of girls, we like to talk. So he listens thoroughly and he gives advice. And I feel like for his age, he gives sometimes good advice. But what you said at the end of the lecture, he's a bit of an asshole because he asks for advice but doesn't take it and does the same thing. My mom is an example of a bad listener because I've repeatedly told her, hey, I don't like the way you do this, or have you not heard what she's saying? And she'll nod it off like, yeah, I'm listening. And she still does the same things, or she complains, and I'm like, okay, are you doing what you're supposed to do? And I ask her these questions to be like, okay, so are you following the rules? Are you doing what you're supposed to be doing? Are you doing your work? Are you minding your own business? And we find out that she's the one at fault for some of the things, at her job especially. But I honestly feel like she's a bad listener in a sense. But because she likes to talk a lot as well. But also one of my coworkers, if I am not careful in the way I speak to her, she will overreact. And it has gotten to a level where I've had to have the boss, the owner of my store, come in and have a talk with her because she has been upsetting and continuously starting arguments with my other coworkers. And the only person she really does not start an argument with or does not escalate an argument with is me, because like, take this, on a Friday night, I noticed she was mumbling to herself and she seemed really agitated. She was walking back and forth, and I knew something was wrong, and I chose to ignore it until she came up to me and talked, because I wasn't gonna get in her business. But when she finally came up to talk to me, she told me she was mad and frustrated and she couldn't tell me why. And I pushed a little bit and I found out why she was mad. And then later on, I proceeded to address her concerns and give her like a solution. And I told her I would try to help her as best as I could and she could come to me. So then I called my manager and addressed the concerns she had. And then the next day is when the boss came to talk with her. And the boss told me that my manager and her like screamed at each other. And then when I went back there to address and tell the boss like, hey, this argument happened between me and her, but not really. And we were able to effectively come to an understanding, me and him. And she did try to scream at me, but you have to control your expressions, like nonverbal communication. You have to be able to control your expressions, the way your posture and everything, because it is really hard sometimes, but it is not something you learn. I mean, it's not something that you're born with, like the chapter and lecture say. You have to learn it, and it's really hard, but it's something that can be done. But it takes a while. Can you reflect on a time where you weren't a good listener and how it impacted your life in an important way? Sorry, I kept the screen open to reference. And yes, I can. Like, let's go back to that example with my coworker. One of her concerns was the pay. What I had understood, she was concerned that one of our stylists, other coworkers, was getting 25 cents more than her. So I addressed those concerns, and then the next day when the boss came to address her concerns one-on-one, and he called me back there to like address her issues with me as well, I brought the pay thing up, and she told me, no, I told you to forget about it. She blew it off because she earns commission. And so she's like, no, I told you to forget about it because I make commission, so the pay doesn't matter. It's just 25 cents more. But me, the previous night, I didn't listen to her saying that, so I brought it up the next day, and which prompted her to tell us, me and my boss, that now she felt that she couldn't trust me. And I felt bad because it was my fault for not effectively listening to her. But I also later on said, no, I want to address every little one of your concerns. Every little complaint you have, I will address, because I do not want you to get stressed, which he easily does. So, in a way, I feel like that was in a way of effectively listening and interpreting the situation, because it could have easily escalated if I gave her the same aggression and tone she was using with me. I would have put myself in a position where we would have argued. But by effectively correcting her and like apologizing for my mistake and addressing her concerns, I avoided an argument and was able to maintain my posture, which was, I feel, like I said, a way of effective communication. Honestly, I find effective listening is actually a big part of my life. I have come to notice that after reading these chapters. I am slowly realizing how much speech is actually important in my daily life. From waking up and communicating with my grandpa, to going to my job and listening to my customers tell me what they want for their haircut and giving them recommendations to make sure that their haircut stays looking fresh and looking good, to helping them or addressing any little concern they have, or giving some advice or listening to their advice they have on life. And sometimes, like, I get CEOs, like I've said before, so I'll ask them for advice, like, hey, how do you run a business, or what do you do, what do you recommend I do in college? So I feel like, honestly, I am a good listener. I feel like I am a good listener. So yeah, I really liked chapter 3. I've learned a lot.